I think that when I'm trying to talk about election interference in Canada, I find that the best way to start uh, is just with a simple fact. And a simple fact is that there were two Canadian departments. I don't know what their names were or whatever, but there were two distinct entities that were tasked with weeding out election interference in our elections in our country. I think I was about to say. And what the Liberal government did is they created two entire new departments to look at election interference, and they let it happen. Four departments didn't get it, right? And election interference took a lot of forms. Blatant propaganda. Canada didn't bat an eye as the Chinese Communist Party basically took over the airwaves and the news outlets. We let the Chinese Communist Party run their propaganda campaigns in Canada. We let them do that. That's the part of this that's going to be really tough. This is the start of a very, very interesting and big change in a lot of ways. Because what's going to happen is you're going to start, people are going to kind of start cluing in about universities and things. They had all these students coming in from China and all that. That boosted budgets and everything else. Universities made a ton of money bringing Chinese students from China, many of whom wouldn't necessarily have had what, from our perspective, would have been good intentions. And the universities made a fortune on it. Universities are really left-wing anyway, really woke, right? Okay, so anyway, yeah, we know that people were intimidated. We know that one guy's family was threatened. We know that they loaded up university students to go and vote and told them if they didn't vote for who they were told to vote for, they would lose their student visas. Because for some odd reason, you can vote in nomination hearings in Canada. You don't even have to be a Canadian citizen. That's ridiculous. You can't, a person that's not a citizen doesn't vote in the country. What country allows that? You know, it's just insane. Absolutely insane the way this country is run. Yeah, so this guy comes on and he's given the task, and he says that there was no negligence. Okay, we know that there was a lot of hanky-panky there, right? I think that there are 11 cases where people are talking about money changed hands, that kind of thing. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. Unless we quit looking. But, you know, he says there's no negligence. 4 departments. All this stuff. And it somehow didn't come to the level of, you know, something that needed to have something done about it, right? We needed to have something done about this, and it wasn't done. So they're both negligent in having not stopped it, and arguably complicit in benefiting from it. It's possible that they didn't do any. They didn't talk and get together and say, "Look, we can help you steal the election." But do I believe that behind closed doors there wasn't that kind of thing? Sure there was. There were Canadian politicians talking to members of the Chinese Communist Party and accepting the help, probably accepting a massage. Seriously, the number of Canadian men especially that have been caught in Chinese honey traps, that's going to be a shock too. Yeah, so this whole thing was a waste of time. They just wasted our time with this guy. What's his name? I forgot his name. David something. Yeah, he says there's no negligence, and so there's not going to be a public inquiry. What there is going to be is a review, a public review. And to do the review, you needed what would it be? There's a word for it. A chairman. Let's say a chairman of the this process that's called a review, and it needs a leader, it needs a chairman. So he nominated himself, and there's almost nobody in the country that agrees with any of this. None of the parties are going along with this. Nobody thinks this makes any sense whatsoever. They just think that this guy, well, he should be being investigated, because he was working for the Trudeau Foundation when they got the $140,000. So he's already chaired the meeting or whatever he's did. Oh yeah, the special rapporteur, right? Well, he's done that as a person who should have been investigated. There's no way that any sane person could say that this doesn't create a perception, right, of conflict of interest. You have to avoid the perception of it. Everybody knows that. And anybody with any brains would recognize this right up front as that kind of a sweetheart deal. You know, this country has gone seriously bonkers. Except the one thing that's sane about Canada is how united they are against this, because it's the Bloc is in it, the NDP, probably the People's Party, the Green Party, I imagine, and you know, just regular people are just looking at this, just another insult from this idiot. Are you kidding? We've had it with your insults, right? It's an insult that you signed up for a deal with a pharmaceutical company to bring $100 million worth of a heroin type substance. You paid $100 million and you created a bunch more addicts. We didn't need that. That's something that Canada really didn't need. It didn't need you creating more heroin addicts. Okay? Like, you're bad people. You did the consulting contract with the pharmaceutical. It was a consultant for a pharmaceutical company that helped supercharge opioid sales. So it's the kind of people that they're dealing with. So what I see is, on the one hand, they're interacting with the Chinese Communist Party, and on the other side with drug dealers. You have to call it what it is. And the last one, the Emergencies Act, was not justified. That was a berserk conclusion. It wasn't justified. There's no way. To understand that situation, I don't know where I would start. Where would you start with this? How would you know? Well, for one thing, the CSIS guy, the French guy, I've forgotten his name, he told everybody quite early into the process that he had contacted the MPs. I think that's who the MPs, and told them it hadn't met the threshold. The CSIS guy called a special meeting with all the MPs to make sure that they understood that. That was early in the process. And as they're getting in more trouble, they were not justified. Nothing about it was justified. Because what they had done is ignored and insulted the protesters. And their mainstream press mostly went along with it. Maybe that's something that people wouldn't generally think about, but by antagonizing them in that way, if they had actually been violent people, bad people, he could have sparked some sort of a violent outbreak by his own reasoning. They're the ones that said those guys are dangerous, and they're the ones that ignored and insulted them constantly. And a lot of Canadians who thought that they were better than these guys, right? In terms of standing up for Canada, if you're a critic of the trucker convoy and you think that you're somehow better, you haven't been studying enough, because that is absolute horseshit. And so after they were in trouble for it for I think 6 or 7 months, and then the CSIS guy came back and said, oh no, I told the MPs that he hadn't met the threshold, but in private, he and I told Justin Trudeau, right? 8 months later, well, we had just had investigations. We're trying to figure out why he did it without justification. And at the beginning, you told everybody that you told the MPs. And we're all going, okay, so how did he justify it? You said it wasn't justified, right? That's 8 months. You got to hassle over this sort of stuff forever. And through all of that, he could have gotten Trudeau out of trouble, and he could have just told the truth, and it saved us the trouble of arguing. He could have told us that at the beginning, that he had told that he had said that to Trudeau. It didn't work that way. When Trudeau was really, we figured we had him. Then the CSIS guy comes out and says, oh, in private, I told him it was justified. That's the fishiest story. You'd have to be a moron to believe that. It's $43 billion we're now paying in interest on the debt. $43 billion. That's money that could have been used much more productively. And because of their economic policies during the pandemic, the discrepancy between the rich and the poor grew, right? Through the pandemic, a lot of people that weren't doing all that great already really did a lot worse. And a lot of people who were doing great already just did a lot better, right? Not fair. Doesn't feel fair to a lot of people. That's what a lot of that spending went to. Like they were paying dividends with that payments. They were giving money to companies who were then paying out dividends with government money. And I don't think that there's many complain about it. The rich got richer and the poor got poorer during that. He trusted China with the vaccine at the beginning there. Total screw up. He let the Chinese military train in Ottawa. So the United States going, what are you doing training? The PLA, the People's Liberation Army. They were training in, and for jet fighting and stuff like that. Training in Canada. Why did we have them come here to train? They're like, what sense is there in that? His brother is a real Sinophile. Should look up Justin Trudeau and his history with the Chinese Communist Party. He went and lived there and wrote a glowing expose on it. I could go to China and have great things to say, but no, he's a commie. Justin Trudeau's brother's a commie. A real one, in my opinion. Really, for a long time now, I watch him and I see him do exactly the wrong thing every time. Like we're struggling with this addiction problem, right? And he spends $100 million on heroin type stuff and gave it away. What do you think is going to happen? It helped some people that might have gotten toxic drugs. That's true. But it created a lot more heroin addicts. A lot of more customers for the pharmaceutical companies. Wink, wink, nod, nod. No. Anybody that can't figure it out by now, up with that guy's, that's awful.